What's up, fam? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, what's up? My name is Natalie and this is my channel, Music to Makeup. So today's video isn't going to be about music or makeup. It's going to be one of those topics in between that I want to start doing more of. But this is a video that I have been wanting to do for a long time, but it was hard for me. I was trying to find a way to approach it, and I still didn't understand completely how I was going to tie in together everything I wanted to talk about. And then I believe that the universe brought this book to my attention for a reason, because this book kind of helped me put together a lot of the pieces and help understand why I was the way I was and how to, I believe I'm in recovery now, because I'm definitely not the woman I was, but I also believe that some of these issues are so, deeply rooted that it's going to take a lifetime to make sure that I don't fall back into old habits. I always knew that I didn't like myself, and I was, desperate for the attention of a man, and I always knew that I had, part of it was not growing up with a positive male role model. My biological dad died when I was 2, and then my mom remarried at 5. And I hated her. My mom is also a woman who loves too much. So, that's where I got it from. And, okay, I'm getting way ahead of myself. This book helped me realize so many of my unhealthy patterns in relationships and understand how I became that way. So if you think you are a woman who loves too much, or if you, put people's needs before your own, then I think you will definitely enjoy this video. And if you do, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let me know if you like these types of videos. They're kind of hard because this is the first time I am going to be verbally saying these things out loud. I've been reading them and feeling them on the inside, but I just want to share my experience with, being a woman who loves too much and being codependent, and how I became that way, and how I kind of got to a point where something needed to change. Okay, so the book is called Women Who Love Too Much, and it is by Norwood. So I'm going to read the description, and it says, "This is the world-renowned, inspiring, practical program for women who believe that being in love means being in pain. A multi-million copy bestseller, Women Who Love Too Much presents a clear, comprehensive 10-point recovery plan for women who are addicted to the wrong men for the wrong reasons. Among the vital lessons you will learn in this program are how the search for the love you never got from your parents can become a crushing obsession in adulthood, how to change from loving someone so much it hurts to loving yourself enough to stop the pain, how to free yourself from destructive loving and build a healthy, meaningful relationship. This step-by-step self-awareness program offers help, understanding, and above all, hope. The pathway to making love the truly happy event it is supposed to be." Okay, so first I want to go into the typical characteristics of a woman who loves too much. And when I say these, try to be really honest with yourself. And I'm gonna get into this later, but denial is a huge part of this. It's I went through my entire life up to this point in denial that I had a problem. It was always the other person, and he wouldn't change, and he wouldn't be responsible, and he cheated on me. It was never me. There was always blame directed at someone else, and I wasn't taking responsibility for my own actions. So I wasn't able to do that until I became brutally honest with myself. Alright, so she had talked about a story real quick, and it said, Jill's attitudes, feelings, behavior, and life experiences were typical of a woman for whom being in love means being in pain. She exhibited many of the characteristics that women who love too much have in common. Regardless of the specific details of their stories and struggles, whether they have endured a long and difficult relationship with one man or have been involved in a series of unhappy partnerships with many men, they share a common profile. Loving too much does not mean loving too many men or falling in love too often or having too great a depth of genuine love for another. It means, in truth, obsessing about a man and calling that obsession love, allowing it to control your emotions and much of your behavior, realizing that it negatively influences your health and well-being, and yet finding yourself unable to let go. It means measuring the degree of your love by the depth of your torment. Okay, so the following characteristics are typical of women who love too much. Number 1, typically you come from a dysfunctional home in which your emotional needs were not met. Number 2, having received little real nurturing yourself, you try to fill this unmet need vicariously by becoming a caregiver, especially to men who appear in some way needy. 3, because you were never able to change your parents into the warm, loving caretakers you longed for, you respond deeply to the familiar type of emotionally unavailable man whom you can again try to change through your love. Number 4, terrified of abandonment, you will do anything to keep a relationship from dissolving. Number 5, almost nothing is too much trouble, takes too much time, or is too expensive if it will help the man you are involved with. Number 6, accustomed to lack of love in personal relationships, you are willing to wait, hope, and try harder to please. Number 7, you are willing to take far more than 50% of the responsibility, guilt, and blame in your relationship. Number 8, your self-esteem is critically low, and deep inside you do not believe you deserve to be happy. Rather, you believe you must earn the right to enjoy life. Oh my God, that's so true. Number 9, you have a desperate need to control your men and your relationships, having experienced little security in childhood. You mask your efforts to control people and situations as being helpful. Number 10, in a relationship, you are much more in touch with your dream of how it could be than with the reality of the situation. Number 11, you are addicted to men and to emotional pain. Number 12, you may be predisposed emotionally and often biochemically to becoming addicted to drugs, alcohol, and or certain foods. Number 13, by being drawn to people with problems that need fixing, or by being enmeshed in situations that are chaotic, uncertain, and emotionally painful, you avoid focusing on your responsibility to yourself. Number 4, you may have a tendency towards episodes of depression, which you try to forestall through the excitement provided by an unstable relationship. Number 15, you are not attracted to men who are kind, stable, reliable, and interested in you. You find such nice men boring. So at one point in my life, every single one of those characteristics was true of me. And for the longest time, I was like, I didn't have any, emotional trauma as a child. Like, my mom loved me and did anything for me, but I see how she was a woman who loved too much and was always trying to help me, and to this day still does. And I'm just now realizing it. Like, the other day, I said, Mom, do you realize that like 90% of the things you say to me begin with, you should, or I always feel like she's trying to control my life and won't just let me live it. And now I realize that, I've been trying to control other people, especially men I was in relationships with, I would try to get them to realize their full potential and try to help them become the best person they can be. But that was what I wanted because that's what I needed. So I was trying to change them into becoming what I needed. But that doesn't work. And we will get into that a little bit. Okay. It is true for all of us that when an emotionally painful event occurs and we tell ourselves it is our fault, we are actually saying that we have control of it. If we change, the pain will stop. This dynamic is behind much of the self-blame in women who love too much. By blaming ourselves, we hold on to the hope that we will be able to figure out what we are doing wrong and correct it, thereby controlling the situation and stopping the pain. Our childhood experiences are particularly painful. We are often unconsciously compelled to recreate similar situations throughout our lives in a drive to gain mastery over them. For instance, if we, like Jill, loved and needed a parent who didn't respond to us, we often became involved with a similar person or a series of them in adulthood in an attempt to win the old struggle to be loved. Characteristics. Typically, you come from a dysfunctional home in which your emotional needs were not met. Perhaps the best way to approach understanding this characteristic is to begin with the second half of it, in which your emotional needs were not met. Emotional needs does not refer only to your need for love and affection, although that aspect is important. Even more critical is the fact that your perceptions and feelings were largely ignored or denied rather than accepted and validated. Here's an example. Parents are fighting. Child feels afraid. Child asks mother, "Why are you mad at daddy?" Mother answers, "I'm not mad," while looking angry and troubled. Child now feels confused, more afraid, and says, "I heard you shouting." Mother replies angrily, "I told you I'm not mad, but I'm gonna be if you keep this up." Child now fears fear, confusion, anger, and guilt. Her parent has implied that her perceptions are incorrect, but if that is true, where are these feelings of fear coming from? The child must now choose between knowing that she is right and that her parent has deliberately lied to her, or thinking that she is wrong in what she hears, sees, and feels. She will often settle for confusion, tuning out her perceptions so she does not have to experience the discomfort of having them invalidated. This impairs a child's ability to trust herself and her perceptions, both in childhood and later in adulthood, especially in close relationships. Parents also often balance each other in unhealthy ways. When the smothering, overprotective mother is married to the angry and rejecting father, each parent is actually enabled by the other's behavior and attitudes to continue relating to children in a destructive way. Okay, so having received little real nurturing yourself, you try to fill this unmet need vicariously by becoming a caregiver, especially to men who appear to be needy, some way needy. Think about how children, especially little girls, behave when they are lacking the love and attention they want. While a little boy may become angry and act out with destructive behavior and fighting, more often a little girl will turn her attention to a favorite doll, rocking and soothing it, and at some level identifying with it. That little girl is engaged in a roundabout effort to receive the nurturing she needs. As adults, women who love too much do the same thing, perhaps only slightly more subtle. In general, we become caregivers in most, if not all, areas of our life. Women from dysfunctional homes, and especially I have observed from alcoholic homes, are overrepresented in the helping professions, working as nurses, counselors, therapists, and social workers. We are drawn to those who are needy, compassionately identify with their pain, and seeking to relieve it in order in order to ameliorate our own. That the men who attract us most strongly are those who appear to be needy makes sense if we understand that it is our own wish to be loved and helped that is the root of the attraction. I remember the day of my mother's wedding to my stepfather. I was acting out and running around, and at 5 I just knew I didn't like him. You know, children are more perceptive than adults, and you know, as we get older, we become conditioned to not really show our feelings, and you know, we conceal most of them. But children, they don't have that filter yet. And you know, I was acting out the only way I knew how as a child. And you know, later on, he, you know, had an affair with another woman, and my mom did everything to try and get it to stop. We moved away for a year because she thought that leaving the area would help. She, you know, bought a restaurant so he could have a job because he was a cook, and she would be able to keep, you know, her eyes on him. But he kept having an affair, and she kept forgiving him. I remember one morning I woke up for school and there was no one in the house. My mom was gone. Her car was gone, and I was like freaking out. And my mom comes back and she was crying, and she was in the bathroom, and I go in there and she told me that he was having an affair. And I think this was like the 3rd time. And I remember this so clearly. I said, "Mom, why are you so with him? Please leave him. This is the 3rd time he's done this to you, please." And she never did. So I grew up believing that being in love was, you know, being with a man who would cheat on you, and you keep taking him back, and not only taking him back, doing more for him. And he just kept doing the same thing. So I grew up believing that what I felt was wrong, and I ended up creating that same dynamic in my own love life, you know, unconsciously, but I had. To be without the relationship, that is, to be alone with oneself, can be experienced as worse than being in the greatest pain the relationship produces, because to be alone means to feel the stirrings of the great pain from the past combined with that of the present. It follows that there really are no coincidences in relationships, no accidents in marriage. When a woman believes that she inexplicably had to get married to a certain man, one she would never have deliberately chosen for herself, for instance, it is imperative that she examine why she chose to be intimate with that particular man, why she ran the risk of pregnancy with him at all. Likewise, when a woman claims that she married on whim, or that she was too young to know what she was doing, or that she wasn't fully herself and could not make a responsible choice, these are also excuses that merit deeper examination. Actually, she did choose, albeit unconsciously, and often with a wealth of knowledge about her future partner even at the onset. To deny this is to deny responsibility for our choices and our lives, and such denial precludes recovery. Once begun, why is it so difficult to stop these relationships, to let go of the partner who is dragging you through all the painful steps of this destructive dance? A rule of thumb is, the more difficult it is to end a relationship that is bad for you, the more elements of the childhood struggle it contains. When you are loving too much, it is because you are trying to overcome the old fears, anger, frustration, and pain from childhood, and to quit is to surrender a precious opportunity for finding relief and rectifying the ways you have been wrong. Even the media gets into the act, not only reflecting this belief system, but also with its influence, reinforcing and perpetuating it while continuing to delegate the job to women. For instance, women's magazines, as well as certain general interest publications, seem always to be publishing how to help your man become articles, while corresponding how to help your women become articles are virtually non-existent in equivalent magazines for men. And we women buy the magazines and try to follow their advice, hoping to help the man in our life become what we want and need him to be. Why does the idea of changing someone unhappy or unhealthy or worse into our perfect partner appeal to us women so deeply? Why is it so alluring, so enduring a concept? To some, the answer would seem obvious. Embodied in the Judeo-Christian ethic is the concept of helping those who are less fortunate than ourselves. We are taught that it is our duty to respond to compassion and generosity when someone has a problem, not to judge but rather to help. This seems to be our moral obligation. Unfortunately, these virtuous motives by no means entirely explain the behavior of millions of women who choose to take as partners men who are cruel, indifferent, abusive, emotionally unavailable, addictive, or otherwise unable to be loving and caring. Women who love too much make these choices out of a driving need to control those closest to them. That need to control others originates in a childhood during which many overwhelming emotions are frequently experienced: fear, anger, unbearable tension, guilt, shame, pity for others, and self. A child growing up in such an environment would be racked by these emotions to the point of being unable to function unless she developed ways to protect herself. Always, her tools for self-protection include a powerful defense mechanism, denial, and an equally powerful subconscious motivation, control. All of us unconsciously employ defense mechanisms such as denial throughout our lives, sometimes about rather trivial matters, and at other times about major issues and events. Otherwise, we would have to face facts about who we are and what we think and feel that do not fit with our idealized image of ourselves and our circumstances. The mechanism of denial is particularly useful in ignoring information with which we do not want to deal. For instance, not noticing how grown-up a child is becoming can be a way of avoiding feelings about that child's leaving home. Denial can be defined as a refusal to acknowledge reality on two levels: at the level of what is actually happening and at the level of feeling. Let's look at how denial helps to prepare a little girl to grow up and become a woman who loves too much. As a child, she may, for instance, have a parent who is rarely at home at night because of extramarital affairs. As she tells herself or is told by other family members that he is busy at work, she denies that there is any problems between her parents or that anything abnormal is happening. This prevents her from feeling fear for her family's stability and her own welfare. She also tells herself that he is working hard, which arouses compassion rather than anger and shame that would be felt if reality were faced. Thus, she denies both reality and her feelings about that reality, and she creates a fantasy that is easier to live with. With practice, she becomes very skilled at protecting herself from pain in this way, but at the same time, she loses the ability to make free choice about what she is doing. Her denial operates automatically, unbidden. In a dysfunctional family, there is always a shared denial of reality. No matter how serious the problems are, the family does not become dysfunctional unless there is denial operating. Children inevitably carry the guilt and blame for serious problems that affect their family. This is because through their fantasy of omnipotence, they believe both that they are the cause of the family's circumstances and that they have the power to change them. Like Lisa, many unfortunate children are actively blamed by parents or others in the family for problems over which the children have no control. But even without the verbal blame of others, a child will assume a large portion of the responsibility for his or her family's troubles. It is not easy or uncomfortable for us to consider that selfless behavior, being good, and efforts to help may actually be attempts to control and not be altruistically motivated. I finally realized recently in my life that I would blame things on other people. Looking back honestly, it's like I made up these lies and I started to believe them so much. And I got that because my mom does the same thing. She blames everything and everyone else but herself. When my stepfather was cheating on her, and still to this day, she says the reason that he cheated was because I was always sleeping in her bed and he never felt loved by her or wanted. And that, I felt a lot of guilt growing up, and that was really hard. And when a child hears something like that, they believe it. It wasn't until later I had to realistically say that's not your fault. She was the adult. It was her responsibility to, tell me, no, you need to sleep in your own bed if that's what she wanted. And that was not the reason he cheated. He cheated because he was a cheater. And because she kept forgiving him and taking him back. And she didn't want to accept responsibility for anything she had done. And so she put it on me. And I would beg her to leave him and to get a divorce. And she would say, oh, I'll get a divorce when you go to college. I just wanted you to have a father, so that's why I got married to him. So then the whole reason she got together with him was for my benefit, so that I would have a male role model in my life. But it actually did more damage than good, because he was a negative role model, and I grew up thinking that that's the way relationships were supposed to be. So then I felt like I was the reason why she couldn't be happy and why she couldn't be with someone she deserved, because she was waiting to get me off to college when he benefited her in no way. She financially supported them. She bought him a restaurant to keep him occupied so he wouldn't cheat. But she said it was for my benefit that she stayed married to him. But I'd be like, I don't want you to be with him. I grew up believing there was something very wrong with me. I wasn't sure what it was, but it had to do with being unacceptable and unlovable. There was no love in our home, just duty. The worst part of it was that we could never talk about the lie we were living, trying when we were out in the world to look better than we were, happier, wealthier, more successful. The pressure to do so was intense, but it was virtually unspoken, and I never felt I could even bring it off. I was so afraid that any moment it would become apparent that I just wasn't as good as anyone else. While I knew how to dress nicely and perform scholastically, I always felt like a fraud. Underneath, I knew I was flawed to the very core. If people liked me, it was because I was fooling them. If they knew me well, they would go away. Growing up without a father made it worse, I suppose, because I never learned how to relate to males in a give and take way. They were exotic animals, forbidding and fascinating at the same time. My mother never told me much about my father, but the little she said made me feel he wasn't anything to be proud of, so I didn't ask questions. I was afraid of what I might learn. She didn't like men much at all, and hinted that basically they were dangerous, selfish, and not to be trusted, but I couldn't help it. I found them all fascinating, starting with the little boys in kindergarten, my first day of school. I was looking hard for what was missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was. I guess it was that I wanted badly to be close to someone, to give and receive affection. I knew that men and women, husband and wives, were supposed to love each other, but my mother was telling me in subtle and not so subtle ways that men didn't make you happy. They made you miserable, and they did that by leaving you, running off with your best friend, or by betraying you in some other way. Those were the kind of stories I've heard from her when I was growing up. I probably decided very early that I wouldn't find myself with someone who wouldn't go away, couldn't, maybe someone nobody else would want. I could never have put it into words when I was growing up, but the only way I knew how to be with someone, especially someone male, was if he needed me. Then he wouldn't leave me because I'd be helping him and he'd be grateful. Pam's pattern of developing relationships in which her role was to understand, encourage, and improve her partner is a formula often employed by women who love too much, and it usually yields exactly the opposite of the hoped-for result. Rather than a grateful, loyal partner who is bonded to her through his devotion and his dependence, such a woman finds she soon has a man who is increasingly rebellious, resentful, and critical of her. Out of his own need to maintain his autonomy and self-respect, he must cease to see her as the solution to all his problems and make her instead the source of many, if not most of them. When this happens and the relationship crumbles, the woman is plunged into a deeper sense of failure and despair. If she cannot even make someone so needy and inadequate love her, how could she ever hope to earn and keep the love of a healthier, more appropriate man? This explains why often such women follow one bad relationship with another that is even worse, because they feel increasingly less worthy with each such failure. It also makes clear how difficult it will be for such a woman to break this pattern unless she gains an understanding of the basic need that drives her. Pam, like many others in the helping profession, used her career to bolster her fragile sense of worth. She could relate only to neediness in others, including her clients, children, husbands, and other partners. In every area of her life, she sought ways to avoid feeling her deep sense of inadequacy and inferiority. Not until Pam began to experience the powerful healing properties of understanding and acceptance that she got from peers in her group did her self-esteem grow so that she could begin to relate in a healthy way to others, including a healthy man. Many women make the mistake of looking for a man with whom to develop a relationship without first developing a relationship with themselves. They run from man to man, looking for what is missing within. The search must begin at home, within the self. No one can ever love us enough to fulfill us if we do not love ourselves. Because when in our emptiness we go looking for love, we can only find more emptiness. What we manifest in our lives is a reflection of what is deep inside us. Our beliefs about our own worth, our right to happiness, what we deserve in life. When those beliefs change, so does our life.